Oh, hi everybody. It's such a pleasure to be here with all of you. The morning comes softly, light filtered pink through the vase of flowers on the windowsill. The time, 5 years ago. I'm 26 years old, my grandfather is 93, and we're in their assisted living apartment. I'm sitting beside my grandfather, who's comatose, and holding his hand in a bucket of gelling alginate, which is the material used in art when you're creating a plaster casting, and trying to decide whether that makes me a really good or really bad granddaughter. You see, my grandfather was a no-mess man who shined his shoes on the daily and cleaned up spills before you even knew you'd spilled anything. When I was 3 years old, he came in to find me finger painting with abandon all over the kitchen table and floor and counters. "What you making, baby?" was all he asked, as he quietly wiped up my fingerprints. So here I was, 26 years old, and still making a giant artistic mess, but this time beside his deathbed. I lean over and whisper, "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I know you probably really hate this, but I think it's going to make it easier for Grandma." He doesn't respond. I knew he wouldn't. Time moves in only one direction, but memory goes both ways, leaping like a kinged checker across the board of our lives. My grandpa liked checkers, and rummy cube and bridge. He was a numbers man, an accountant in both personality and profession. He taught me games that involved skill, no luck. Luck games, he'd throw up his hands. "This is no game." So place the memory checkers with me. Let's go back in time. I'm 5 years old, underneath my grandparents' kitchen table. My grandpa's whistle fills the kitchen. I'm sitting underneath the table, my fort, and look up through the glass top, through the translucent tablecloth, at the vase of flowers above me. My grandpa loves flowers. They always live twice as long as you'd think they would when he cares for them. He's making a turkey sandwich, his one and only cooking move. I love his turkey sandwiches. The recipe goes like this: 2 pieces of bread, ding, toasted to perfection. 1 wipe of mayo on each piece of bread. 3 slices of turkey, 2 slices of cheese, 1 piece of iceberg lettuce, 1 slice of tomato from the perfectly sliced tomatoes in the Tupperware container, cut exactly in half on the diagonal, with a napkin and a fork that would never be used. I have never been able to replicate the perfection of that sandwich and how it tasted when I was 5 years old. He finishes the sandwich and walks to the table. I come up from under the table like a hungry pet. Now, I just eaten like 20 minutes before. I had my grandmother's mid-afternoon refreshments, but eating and food at my grandparents' house were unrelated. So, eating hunger and food were unrelated. So I come out sniffing the sandwich. He sees me eyeing it. "Hey, baby, I don't think I can finish this. It's too much for me. Why don't you have some?" Well, if it's heaven, how could I refuse? I sit down beside him, and he gets another plate and another fork, which I will not use. "Come on, baby, sit by me." "Grandpa, tell me a story." "I don't know any stories." "Yes, you do." "Have I told you the one about the roller skates?" It always begins like this. "Tell me a story. Have I told you the one?" The answer is always yes. Even at 5, I've already heard all his stories countless times. But I like the tradition of it, like the tradition of the sandwich. There's comfort in the asking and the answering. The call and response, like a Seder. At Passover in Jewish tradition, the youngest child asks the same 4 questions every year, and then everybody tells the same story. It's the same every year, but you, the listener, have grown, and so you hear something different. "Tell me a story, Grandpa." Well, you see, back in the day, it was the Depression, mind you, the World's Fair came to Chicago. So I'm working, of course. I'm a teenager, but you work in those days. I'm working at Robinson's department store. So I save up, and I'm working as a barker. You barked? No. Not like a dog, sweetheart. You yell for people to come in and buy things. Oh. And then, so I'm working, I save my money, I buy your Uncle Marty, my kid brother, a pair of roller skates. Oh, he was so excited. First time he puts them on, falls, breaks his arm. I feel terrible. So I take him to the doctor, and I says to the doctor, "Will he be able to play the piano after the arm heals?" And the doctor says, "Sure." So I says this to him, I says, "Well, that's good, 'cause he couldn't play before." Couldn't play before. before. I said that to the doctor. I will go to the mat with anyone who says that my grandfather was not the first person to say that. We finish our sandwiches. Hey, yep, baby, how about some ice cream? Now, this is a big deal because ice cream at my grandparents' house happened at precisely 10 p.m. every evening, not earlier and not later. But when your baby granddaughter's visiting, there are exceptions. Jump forward. I'm with my grandfather in the dining area of their assisted living home. I am 26 again, but this is a few months before the incident with the hand casting. He has cancer in an advanced stage and has Alzheimer's, but he's still well enough at this point where I can wheel him down for meals. We're sitting together. Now, it was a nice place. I like their assisted living place just fine, but something about communal eating creates a brutal social hierarchy akin to a high school. Some of you might be familiar with this. It boggles the mind. The top of the heap are the ladies in their 80s. We don't need walkers. I kid you not, they pick the seating, and there is a cool kids table at Sunday brunch. All these ladies with helmet hair sitting around and saying, do you know, I don't think Harold picks my bingo numbers. He doesn't do it on purpose. And did you see Marlene's new house coat? Oy. I'm sitting with my grandpa, who was the metaphorical freshman in this scenario, they being the powerful seniors, both literally and figuratively. I'm sitting beside him and cutting up his sandwich for him. One more bite, Grandpa? I ask. He opens his mouth for the fork, not because he's hungry, but because he wants to please me. I'll take it. I feed it to him. The seniors are talking smack behind me. Do you see that little girl there? That girl, she's with him almost every weekend. I know. The caregivers are not supposed to eat with the residents. If he is too sick to eat down here without a caregiver, he should be upstairs with the nursing home ladies. This is ridiculous. That caregiver, I'm going to report her. So I was at the bottom of the social hierarchy in high school, so this is not uncharted territory for me. But guess what? I'm not in high school anymore, and nobody talks smack about my grandpa. I put down his fork and turn around. Excuse me, ladies. I couldn't help but overhear you, and I just wanted to let you know that I'm actually his granddaughter, and I am here often helping to take care of him because he's always taken really great care of me, and now I have the privilege of repaying him that. Is that a problem? Oh, the silence is glorious. They almost dropped their scones in their coffee. His granddaughter. Oh, isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely? Surely, that's absolutely lovely. You're so kind to him. Yes, I say. I am, because he's kind. I learned to be kind from watching the way he treats people. I turn back to my grandpa. Keep your voice down, he says. Sorry, I say. They started it, I think. It was awkward, whisper the ladies. Where's your grandmother? She's at the doctor. I just wanted to know where she was. She'll be here soon. He's asked me this every few minutes for the last few hours since she's left. My grandmother comes back then, and we go upstairs and I tell her about the incident with the ladies, lest she should hear about it from somebody else. She giggles. Oh, that reminds me of your mother. When your mother was your age, in her 20s, she used to come to high holidays. Those days we had assigned seats. And the couple that sat behind us, well, they would talk. And your mother, you know your mother, she would never come in stockings. So she would come sit with us, and one day, the lady behind me, she says to her husband, Catherine's daughter never wears stockings. Well, I turn around to her, and I says, she isn't wearing stockings, but she's the one who's here. My mom starts laughing in the kitchen. I still don't wear stockings, she yells. You're still the one who's here, I say. Showing up counts for a lot, says my grandpa. And now for a nap. I push him in his wheelchair into their bedroom. My grandparents, for as long as I can remember, have had two single beds, like in I Love Lucy, but they push them together so they make one big bed. There's a little dip in the middle. That has always been my spot, a cuddling spot. I help my grandpa into his side of the bed. Next to the bed, there is a safe, one of those wonderful home safes, filled mostly with things of emotional rather than economic value. It's got papers and important things like that, but mostly it has costume jewelry that my grandpa gave my grandma in the 30s, and drawings my mom did in kindergarten, drawings I did in kindergarten. The sorts of things a thief would be really disappointed to find. However, nobody was concerned that a thief would break into the cellar. Something we were discovering this particular day. My grandmother tried, my mother tried, I tried, nobody could get it open. From the bed, my grandfather raised his hands. Why are we doing this? I know how to open the safe. For what? Why are we doing this? How do you remind a man that he's losing his memory? How do you tell someone that he's dying? My grandmother keeps opening the safe. Well, forget it, he says. I'm taking a nap. Wake me if you figure it out. I give up too and crawl into my spot next to him. I snuggle against his body, frail like a desiccated bird, hard in all the wrong places. Jump back 20 years. We're sitting in the exact same spots on that bed, but my grandfather is doing his crossword puzzle, and I am reading the cartoons on the back of the page that he's working on. We sit like this all the time. How do you do in ink, Grandpa? I ask. You don't make mistakes. He smiles, but he means it. He doesn't make mistakes. Ever. No mistakes, no blinks. I contort to read the cartoons, and he adjusts for me, a familiar dance. Tell me a story, Grandpa. I don't know any stories. Yes, you did. Have I told you the one about camp? Tell me again. And he does. Well, when I went to Camp Henry Horner, I was a camper up until through 1932, and I loved camp. I won for best camper, 350 campers, and I won. And then after 1932, my family needed money. I was the oldest, the depression and all, so I started working. I never minded working. I was in charge of the commissary. I ordered food for the whole camp. Me, just as a teenager, I was in charge of all of it. Then, one particular time, there was a boxing match, for the campers. Well, one of the kids got sick, so they come to me and they says, Vic, can you come in, can you fill in? So I say, okay. So I go out to the boxing match. So it's me, 5'9", 125 pounds this straggly Jewish kid, and this big Italian boy, the muscles on him. Wait, well, wouldn't you know, kiddo, I beat him. Yeah. My grandpa loved camp. I go to overnight camp, inspired by his stories. I hate camp. Horrible, traumatic time, and send home letters that are pages long with the tear stains circled, and lines like, I want to run home to you like a deer running through the wind. I was 11, I was going to be a theater major. What do you want? My mother and father and grandmother call the camp concerned and send me long letters. My grandpa mails me cartoons. With the simple note, love Grandpa, and all of the cartoons cut out perfectly from the Sunday page. Every week, it's the only thing that's guaranteed to make me laugh. My grandpa's bed has been replaced with a hospice bed, but it's still pushed up against my grandmother's bed. After 69 years of marriage, they reach for each other even in their sleep. I'm standing beside him and hand him a medal, which I've gotten now that I know how to open the safe. I can bring him memorable objects. This is the medal you won. 1932, you were the best camper, I say. He looks at me, his eyes cloudy, and holds the medal in his hand. I can tell he doesn't recognize it. Nice heft, he says. Yeah, it was important. You won. At, what was the camp again? I've been leaving spaces for him to fill in his stories. Sometimes he knows. Not today. Camp Henry Horner, that's it. I say as if I've just remembered so he doesn't feel bad. Camp Henry Horner, 350 campers, and you were the best, Grandpa. That happened to me, The best. Isn't that something? He smiles at the medal in his hand. His Alzheimer's has progressed. I've been telling him his own life stories for months now. It's still our personal story Seder, but the call and the responses are reversed. Have I told you the one about the icebox, Grandpa? Tell me again. I tell him all of his stories, everything I can remember over and over. I tell him about the JCC and about the Boys and Girls Club and the streetcar, the dance where he saw my grandmother beautiful for the first time. At this, his face lights up and he leans forward as if to say something. "You remember," I say. "No," he says, "but tell me anyway, I want to know what happens." It's a familiar fairy tale, a comfort. His longtime caregiver comes into the room to see if he's finished his Ensure, which he hasn't. He tries to offer it to me, ever the gentleman, the caregiver. "Here, baby, you finish it." "Oh, thank you, Grandpa. It's yours." He looks at his caregiver and can't quite place her. "The nice lady in the corner, would you like this?" "No, you have it, Victor. It's yours." "Ah." He drinks it obligingly. And his eyes flash up to the television where Dancing with the Stars has been playing for an hour. He notices it and looks under the sheet at his emaciated legs, suddenly very concerned. "Jessica, there are a lot of people there. There are a lot of people there. I should put on some pants." "No," I say, smiling. "No, Grandpa, it's okay. You don't need to wear pants. That's television. You don't need pants for television. Or for us." "Wow, isn't that something?" he says, smiling. I tuck him in and watch as he falls asleep. Around this time, I'd been taking guitar lessons. You see, I approached it with the innocent bravado of someone who doesn't know enough to know that they don't know anything. And so, armed with my 4 chords that I'd already learned, I was pretty much Joni Mitchell. I wrote my grandfather a song, which I will not play for you on guitar because I have since learned that I'm actually not a very good guitar player. "I am your safe keeper of stories. 26 years of listening thus far. I am your safe for now and always. No combination needed. I am where you are." I record the song on a CD and present it to them proudly, and then realize that neither of my grandparents actually know how to use their CD player, so I just promise to come over and sing it whenever they want, and I do. "When I was young, I asked you to tell me all about life. Before I was born, you were gentle and kind. Taught me where I come from. The stories so sacred because they're well worn. And just like Torah portions we read through the years, I'm hearing your stories through my older ears. And each time I learn a new lesson or two, 'cause the person I am is made of stories from you. Now I am your safe keeper of stories." My mom is his lifeline. She does the meds, calls the doctors, takes him to appointments. So I decide that my job is to bring the joy, stories and laughter and jokes. One day on a whim, I bring a monkey puppet to his house that I'd gotten at the National Storytelling Festival. "Hiya, Grandpa," the monkey says. The grandfather looks at it. His eyes widen with the wonder of a child, and he reaches out, tentative and fascinated. He touches the monkey puppet, it moves, and he pulls his hand away. And then he beams, petting the monkey puppet like I've just brought him the most miraculous thing. He reaches over for his unfinished Ensure. "Would you like this?" "No, thank you, Grandpa," the monkey says. "Of course you don't want it, you're a monkey." And then he pretends to eat the monkey puppet and laughs until he coughs. This, my numbers man Grandpa, my accountant Grandpa, I'm watching as he's turning little by little into his purest childhood self. He falls asleep with the monkey in his arms, and I gently pull my hand out. I can't tell whether he actually thinks it's a real monkey or whether he knows it's for pretend, the same way you can never tell with a young child. But it doesn't matter. I walk out of the room quietly as he sleeps, snuggling the monkey in the crook of his neck. What a strange and circular life we lead. Not long after the monkey puppet, my grandpa stops speaking, he stops eating, he falls into a somewhat comatose state. And then, a few days into what we thought was going to be the end, one day he sits up at exactly 10 p.m. at night looks around, startled, and says, "So, how about some ice cream?" We brought him ice cream, and he ate all of it. And then he laid back down and closed his eyes and never spoke to us again. Old habits die hard, I guess. As the final days went on, and it was clear that he was not going to come out of that comatose stage again, we still continued to sit by his bed and talk to him. It's funny, I'd always imagined that the things you'd say at a deathbed would be poetic and grand, but it's mostly trivial nonsense. Everyday things that translate to "I love you." I'm sitting beside him and telling him about my lunch with my grandma. I was eating the sandwich with her grandpa, and so I think it was a BLT, and there were tomatoes in it, but I know she can't have tomatoes, the diverticulitis. So I took out the tomatoes, but then I was like, oh, well, what am I gonna do? Well, I guess I'll eat the tomatoes. So I ate the tomatoes, and there was mayo on the tomatoes, and I thought of you. And I'll always think of you when there's mayo on tomatoes. My grandma talks about those kinds of things too. I'm sitting on the couch one day, and I overhear her talking to him. I've been telling her that I've been writing haikus a lot, and so she tries to write one for him. "You have funny eyebrows." No, that's only 4 words. "Your eyes would look good on a little girl." I don't know how to write it, but I know what's in my heart. "You have funny eyebrows, my baby. They go up and down and this way, and this one comes straight out. You and I, we never tweeze our eyebrows, do we? You think I'm silly talking about eyebrows, because what does a man have to worry about eyebrows? If you were a woman, you'd use a pencil all day and all night, wouldn't you, my baby?" she said, stroking his arm. "Yes, you would. Yes, you would, and I love you, my sweetie pie." She holds his hand. "You have funny flat fingernails, too. Not like mine, not nice like mine. Yours are funny and flat, and you have silly eyebrows that stick up, my baby, and I love you." I look at my fingernails. They're really flat. So are my mom's. I think about the legacies we leave of all over their lives. Mayo on tomatoes and flat fingernails. I think about my grandpa's hands. How my grandma will miss them, how I'll miss them. I think about the plaster casting kit that I happen to have in my trunk at that exact moment, that I've been planning to experiment with whenever I had the time. I think of an idea. Which brings us to the strange and intimate moment, sitting with my grandfather's hand in alginate. That very sweet morning. The morning came softly. A feeling of sadness deep in my pit, the pit of my stomach, as I held his hand in the slush. Now, in my defense, I had asked my grandmother's permission and had practiced on her several days before. I was surprised that her hand came out with such beautiful detail, and so we decided as a group that this was an okay thing to do. I talked to him while I'm casting his hand. "I'm so sorry. I know you really hate this, Grandpa. I'm so sorry. I know. I'll clean your fingernails after, I promise. I just think it's going to make it easier for Grandma if she can hold your hand after." The words stick in my throat. The alginate sticks on his hand. The timer goes off. I pull it off his hand. It's a perfect inverted casting. It's the beauty of casting the hand of someone who's unconscious. They don't move and mess it up. Not that I recommend it. I pour the plaster in and turn the thing upside down. You have to wait 24 hours before you can expose the casting. There's an understanding, a silent knowledge among all of us that the life that this casting is meant to replicate may have expired by the time the casting comes out of the alginate. The next morning, my grandmother walks by his room and sees that he's not breathing. She showers, puts on black, calls her best friend Claire. And a little while later, she walks by the room again and looks in. "Gail! Gail, it's a miracle! He's breathing!" My mom comes out of the room. "Yeah, did you think he wasn't?" "Oh dear. What, did you think he died?" My grandmother looked like a child who tracked mud onto the carpet. "What did you say to Claire?" "I need to make a phone call." It was too late. The emergency friend broadcast system was being tested, and there was nothing we could do about it. As if on cue, Claire comes running into the apartment without her poodle or her glasses, the two things she never leaves the house without, and wraps my grandmother in a hug that only a friend of 60 years can give. "I'm so sorry," she says. "Me too," says my grandmother. Claire laughs and sits down on the couch. Then Bea and Josh come running in. None of her friends turn on or charge their cell phones, much to the dismay of their adult children. They come running in. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry." "He's alive," says my grandmother. "I know, baby," says Bea. "He'll always be alive." "No," says Claire from the couch. "He's actually alive, Bea." "What? What do you mean he's alive? How could this have happened?" She was really mad. You'd think she would have given my grandma a little more slack under the circumstances. But it does provide us for entertainment for the rest of the evening. My mom and myself and my grandpa's caregiver and taking turns impersonating Bea. "How could this have happened? How could this have happened?" We have a great time. It makes my grandma laugh. And I like to think that on that last night, my grandfather could hear us, the laughter of the 3 generations of women in his life, and knew my grandma was going to be okay. All night, my mom and I wake up every 2 hours and turn his body so he won't get bed sores. And as we do, I move the vase of flowers that I brought for him from one side of the bed to the other, so he's always facing it. So if in that last moment he opens his eyes, he will see something beautiful. Something more than sponges and oxygen machines. He will see something alive. And he will see us. And he does. The next morning, when my grandfather opened his eyes for that last breath, he saw flowers. And he saw the faces of 3 generations of women who laughed too loud and didn't wear stockings and showed up. This story has 2 epilogues. But first, if you go to my grandmother's apartment, she will show you something. Immediately upon arriving, she will usher you to the table where there is a glass box. In it are 2 hands, cast in plaster, reaching for one another. And she will point to the sign right in front of the box that says, "Do not touch." She is not messing around. The other epilogue. When I was cleaning out his things after the funeral, I came across an envelope. It was addressed to me at overnight camp. It was sealed, but had never been sent. I knew what was in it. You know what was in it. Cartoons. And a little piece of paper, I'm sure, that said, "Love, Grandpa." I didn't open it. I still haven't. I'm keeping it. I'm keeping it for some time in the future, some adult version of that overnight camp trauma, so he can be there for me, making me laugh one more time when I need it most. That's my safe. So who is your safe? Who keeps your stories? Who have you told your life to so far? Who is your safe for now and always? No microphone is needed. Just tell who you are. Just loved her, loved her. They'll never be far.